Welcome back to part 2 of Catalogue Chats. This is simPRO Chats with Daz and Adz. I'm Darren Whitby. I'm from Platinum Consultants. And with me, my partner in crime is...
Yeah, I'm Adam from AMAC Consulting. How you going, buddy?
Very, very well. We just had an exciting chat about Catalogue Part 1, which blew totally over our time budget. And I'm quite sure that Catalogues Part 2 is going to do the same. But we have so much juicy information for you on this episode. We hopefully you learnt a lot from the last episode. I think this one's going to be even better. You revved up, raring to go?
Man, I am pumped.
Who ever thought that the catalogue would be such an interesting topic to cover?
Well, Geelong's playing Port Adelaide tonight, so I'm repping my Geelong gear, so that's what I'm excited about. But mate, catalogues too. Cool. Where do you want to start, buddy?
Well, there is so much to the catalogue, and if you haven't watched part 1, I really recommend you stop what you're doing, go back to part 1 of the catalogue. We covered a lot of the basics in there, the structure. We covered, how you should set it up with the multiple suppliers, how you should update it, how you should get it in there in the first place and keep it up to date. This time we're going to cover some of the advanced features, how you actually use the catalogue. And there are a lot of tabs and a lot of boxes. Which ones should you ignore? And hopefully we will explain just enough so you never need to ask the question again. And not too much to waste too much time, or which areas are actually underused and underutilized, jeepers. So I think I'd like to get straight into a topic, and I'm going to call to the bench search terms. I will have the witness. So search terms, simple and easy. Put a word in. If you type that when you're searching, you can find it. But there's so many tricky things you can do with search terms that are extremely useful within simPRO. I'll give you a quick example, and you've probably got some too, Adz. In search terms, I've had quite a few times where people said, when I tick the favorite box, which we're going to cover in a few more minutes, it's favorites for everybody. How do I have my own favorites? Now, my recommendation is use the search terms. Yep. Within search terms, what you can do is think of a couple of letters, 2 or 3 letters that will not be ever used in anything else. I'll give you an example. ZXZ. It's just a couple of letters. They're right next to each other. If you type ZXZ space cable, it'll bring up all the cable that I like to use because my code word is ZXZ, for example. What you do then, if you want to create favorites for yourself, why not put this little search term ZXZ into the search terms of all of the catalog items that you like to use? On top of that, you could put the word service, or you could put the word project, or you could put the word repair, or you could put a model number of a particular air conditioner, and all the products related to that air conditioner can come up. Search terms can be so useful if you be very tricky and smart with it. What about you? Have you got any extra uses for search terms? What else can we do with it?
Well, you literally just took all the things I was about to say.
Sorry.
And you said I've got an example.
I mean to say I've got 12 examples.
Look at all those examples are all the ones I use.
I tell you what, out of the list of topics that we've got, why don't you choose the next one to go on with, and you can start with your 12 examples.
Well, I had a 15-minute question that I gave the last episode, so why not? All right, cool. So what do we got? Search terms. Let's have a chat about linked items. Well, that kind of goes into linked items as well, because you can use search terms in lieu of linked items if you really want to, or you could use linked items as they're intended to be used. So linked items are a way to be able to tie 2 catalog items together. To say when I'm always using cable, I also want my clips to show up, so that way I can assign, if I can sell some clips when I'm selling some cable, for example, or you got a GPO and you want to put in a plaster bracket, whatever the case may be, you can link those items together. So if you're selling or buying a particular item, it'll then just say, do you also want to do this? You go, yeah, sure. Add it in. Pretty cool little feature, that one. I like it.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, so just the way the functionality works, if you type the search term in, you look for ABC123, it pops up, and it also says, would you like to see the linked items? And I usually, in my training, we love analogies and we love examples. Would you like fries with that? Basically, that's what it's asking you. I'll give you a good practical example. There's a company that would have, for example, they would buy or sell concrete. The problem with concrete is it's $7 a bag, but it's $12 to get it delivered because it's so heavy. They would always leave off the delivery. So what we did is we linked a delivery for this bag of concrete to the concrete. Every time they added concrete to a purchase order, it popped up saying, would you like to add delivery? Every time they added it to a quote or a job, would you like to add delivery? Very good solution, nice and simple. And you can link items to each other. Just one tip there. If you link the bag of concrete to the freight, if you add the freight, it isn't going to ask you about the bag of concrete. It's a one-way link. So if you add, say, for example, cable, mounting block, and various other bits and pieces, conduit or whatever, to a double PowerPoint, for example, if you choose cable, it's not going to ask you, would you like a double PowerPoint? But if you choose a PowerPoint, it'll ask you, would you like all the rest of it? Linked items is actually one of the ones I would put into hidden gems. It's pretty cool.
It is very cool.
Underutilized. All right, because I almost stole your thunder on that one as well. How about out of the whole list, what's your next favorite thing about catalog items, advanced sort of features?
Let's chat about, oh gosh. Okay, one of the things that I get asked a lot of is how can I buy something in one unit and sell it in another unit? And that's a very, very common thing that happens all the time. So let's have a chat about that, because I think that's a really important one to actually focus a little bit more time on and really get it right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the example could be somebody wants to buy in a pack of 100, but they want to stock it in and sell it in an individual quantity.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. So this one I might actually include a couple of screenshots in, just because it's probably important to know what we're talking about. And I'm going to try and do this from memory. I don't have simPRO behind the scenes. So essentially there's two key tabs that you want to focus on in this instance. There's the details tab, the very first one, and there's the supplier tab as well. So the two areas that we're going to need to focus on is the minimum pack quantity as well as the supplier quantity. I'm seeing nods, so I'm saying it right. So essentially, the example here is a box of 100 and we're going to sell in single units. So essentially what we want to do is we want to add in a 100 to the minimum pack quantity to say we're always buying in multiples of 100, because that's essentially what the minimum pack quantity will do, is buy in multiples of that amount. Then in the supplier tab, what we want to do is we want to say what equals 1. So there's a supply quantity in there as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in the supply quantity 100. So 100 equals 1, and we're buying in multiples of 100. So if we have bought 200, the system's going to know that we're buying 2 boxes of. So obviously we need to make sure that the description of the product is appropriate. Whether you change the description of the product in the details tab and then have in the supplier tab to say that it's a box of 100, and in the description of the product could just be a single unit of whatever it may be that you're buying. What do you reckon, Daz? How's that sound?
Perfect. You explained it perfectly. There's some good examples out there. Let's say you're in HVAC and you buy a bottle of 13 or 17 or 21 kilogram gas. You're not selling 23 kilograms at a time on a normal scale. Quite often, if you've got a big project, maybe you are. But really, you sell it in per maybe 100 gram. So you buy a 13 kilogram. You want that to become a per kilogram in stock type arrangement. So in the minimum pack quantity, you put 13. because we're buying 13 kilograms at a time. We can't buy 12. They don't have a 12 kilogram bottle, for example. They might only have a 13 kilogram bottle. And then on exactly as you said, on the supplies tab, the supplier quantity is going to be 13. So for every 13 kilograms I buy, please add 1 bottle. And then the details tab, that's what you see. That's going to be, it should say per kilogram, because that's what the mobile device will see. It's what the stock will show in as, and it's what it shows to the customer. And on the suppliers tab, we want that to be per like a 13 kilogram bottle of R42 or whatever it is, R22 gas. That's an example of when you would want to break it down. You know, I wouldn't say I'm buying 1,000 zip ties and I want to add them into stock per zip tie. That's a bit overboard, but there's quite a few examples. For electricians, quite likely all of their cables going to be per meter anyway. But things like, let's say, refrigeration again, unlucky. They buy copper tube or plumbing. Copper tube, 25 meters for your flexible copper tube. You probably want to introduce it in a per meter rate, because you're generally not selling 25 meters at a time.
And a length of pipe. Length of pipe is another good one. Just put in a length of pipe is worth 6 meters. And you can then sell a meter of piping if you need to, and buy it per length. So lots of really practical examples of why you'd use this feature.
Absolutely. Flexible conduit, 50 meters at a time you can buy, selling it per meter. Yeah, I like that one. Good choice. So
Thanks,
I'm going to choose a very simple one. Add-on pricing. So I heard this is one of your favorite features. No, I'm kidding. Because add-on pricing, you'll see it in there. There is such a thing as add-on pricing, and you can tick to sort of enable it. I really don't think anybody should use add-on pricing. I don't think it really does what a lot of people would intend it to do. If you are using add-on pricing, sometimes you will need 2 items, one that you sell in a certain length or unit of measure, and another one that you have a set price for that. If we may cover in more detail what it does and why, just for the moment, so we don't blow out to another 2-hour episode. Just take it from us that the add-on pricing is something you probably don't need. What short version it's designed for is that there's one price if you sell a single item, but there's a slightly discounted price if this is the second item that you're selling. So it's most commonly used, say, on pre-builds where you've got your first PowerPoint costs $180, but if we install another one while we're out there, it would only be $120. There are reasons why it doesn't work so well. And it doesn't show cleanly and easily to the customer. It doesn't automatically price. You have to go and select manually all the ones you want to use the add-on price for. It doesn't just automatically go. So I would suggest, regardless, is you have 2 pre-builds. First item, second item, and beyond.
And it was kind of introduced for the mobile app anyway, for the quote and sales module in the mobile app. That's primarily what it was designed for. So I've never really had anyone use it, so I'd say let's just move on. Yep,
happy to do that. What's your next choice?
Let's have a chat about images and attachments, because this is a good one. This has always been kind of handy, but it's becoming better now that you can use it in the form builder as well. Yep. So obviously in the attachments tab, you can go and upload a photo of the product. A pretty common question I get asked, can we upload photos in bulk? No, you can't, not through CSV files. The nature of a CSV file is that it gets rid of all formatting to comma separated value. So no, the only way that you can do that in bulk is if you're really good with the API and you can actually import images via the API. That is one way to do it, but more often than not, you just upload them individually. So for it to work, go to the catalog, click on the attachments tab, upload a picture, make sure you tick the box that says default image, and we're good to go. If you didn't know that you could do this, you can go to the modified table view in your catalogs and add the image into the table, which would just be like a little small image. You can click on it and it'll expand up to show you the full size of it, which is really cool. So that's all it could really do for a long time. And so there's a lot of work for not a lot of return. But now you can actually include those images in the invoices and quotes. If you go to the form builder, you can actually now go and upload those images into the forms and embed them in the forms, which is really, really handy now. So it's given it a lot more functionality than what it previously had.
Absolutely. And if just a tip, if you want to see it when you're in a quote or a job, you do have to enable it within the catalog first. And that also adds it to the quote or job modify table view as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. For my next topic, I'm going to choose assets. We're not going to cover this in a great deal of time, but what I do want to say is just the basic functionality. There, you'll see when you open a catalog item, there's a little tick box that says asset. So a lot of people think, oh, good. So when I buy a new tool, if I tick asset, it's going to go into the plant and equipment. No, that's actually not what it does. It's not your asset. What it's doing is if you buy to a job an asset like a air conditioner or a hot water system or something that you would like to then do maintenance on later, this can remind you to actually fill in the details of serial number and location, etc., when you actually add it to a job. So when you tick that box, you'll get a new tab that pops up. In that box, in that tab, you can actually fill out the bits of information that's going to be standard. So the make and model is probably something that's standard because it's a particular catalog item. You're buying a particular product. The manufacturer would be standard. There's a couple of other things that you can pre-fill. So then for anytime you sell one of these items, not only does it remind you to use this asset, but to create the asset, it also pre-fills some of the data out for you. So it can actually be quite useful for people that are using assets, not just maintenance planner, but recurring jobs. And you can put in the install date or some other bits and pieces depending on what's in there.
Yeah. That almost needs its own like 15-minute segment, to be honest, because if you're buying it for stock and not directly for a job, there's different business rules.
Yes, and when you do that, it can actually put the asset into a site, which is your workshop or your warehouse or something like that.
Yeah.
For assets and maintenance planner and a bit more information on that, please see our maintenance planner versus recurring jobs episode.
Yep.
We don't specifically discuss this particular topic, but we may delve into more detail a little bit later.
I honestly don't think there's enough people that use that feature for us to even dedicate an episode to it. It's just...
No, it wouldn't be a whole episode, that's for sure.
No, it doesn't get used.
No, but it is useful. Right. Hopefully you can explore that feature.
Let's chat about the history. The history tab's a good one. That is a bit of a hidden gem as well, because there's a lot of really good stuff that you can get from that history tab. So the history tab, I mean, it could do with a little bit of improvement. Sometimes it's a bit hard to read if there's a lot of movements that are going back and forth with that particular product. But where I've found the history tab becomes really useful, and again, talk about in a past life, I was operations for a energy retailer. So we actually used simPRO at that point of time. And we had a big recall on some DC isolators, which was great. Well, it wasn't great, it was bad. But anyway, what was great is that the history tab let me filter through all the jobs that we'd used that particular product on in that specified period of time to let us isolate which customers we needed to call to replace those isolators. So obviously the purpose of the history tab is to show anywhere that you've sold that product, anywhere that you've used that product to from a stock perspective. And it lets you filter by date range. It shows you the supplier, the destination, where it came from, all sorts of really good stuff, whether it was a stock take or a purchase order, the destination from a storage perspective, a lot of really, really good information in that history tab.
Absolutely. Really, really good. So, okay, for my next topic, I want to talk about pricing and pricing tiers. So within a catalog item, you've got a tab for pricing. Essentially, the short version is this is the price you're going to sell the product for. If you don't touch anything, it sells at whatever the default markup is on cost or on trade. More on trade a little bit later. The other things you can do though is you can have pricing tiers. So if you've got different customers and the customers maybe you've got a retail customer, you've got a builder, for example, and you might have a commercial such as a real estate type agent. You can have 3 different prices set aside for these different pricing tiers. Each customer can be assigned like their group, which is a pricing tier. So I'm in the commercial group, then I get a percentage markup or I get a set price for this particular item. So the pricing tiers need to be set up in the setup first. And then what you'll see when you go to the pricing tab is you'll actually see a separate line for each pricing tier. And within that, you can decide whether you want a markup. So you might have different markups for each one, or in some cases you might want set price. So you might have an item called consumables. And for residential, we charge $10 for consumables. For real estate, we charge $5. And for commercial, we might charge $3 of consumables, or however you want to sort of play it. And the pricing tab's quite good, and it comes into its own really when you add the pricing tiers. But at the very least, you can do a set markup or set price for plumbers, your washers, your tap washers. You buy at how many cents. You might sell them for $4 a washer, for example. So you go in there, do a set price, and make it $4. You don't have to change every invoice then, which is good.
So generally your lower value items are the ones you're generally fixing in, because there's a lot more margin to those lower value items than they are at a big value item. So you obviously you can mark up a washer an awful lot more than you could mark up a hot water system. So from that perspective, they're the ones you want to do. Also, just another little thing that not a lot of people know about, or they see the box, they just never tick it. You can actually change your sell price based on how many of those products you're selling to a customer at any given point of time as well. And then you've also got group markups, and let's save that for maybe a hidden gem, because I like the group markups. All right, so let's have a chat about the manufacturer, because that's another really cool little thing that you can do. Generally doesn't get used an awful lot, but actually is quite handy. Inside the details of the catalog item, you can put the manufacturer against it. So whether it's a clip seal product or whatever it may be, or if it's a hot water unit, you can put in that's a Rinnai or whatever. But one of the really cool things that you can do with the manufacturer is when you're looking for parts or you're searching your catalog, if you hit the little advanced button in the middle of the screen, you can actually then filter your products by the manufacturer. Now, you can get creative with it. The manufacturer doesn't need to legitimately be a manufacturer. It could be anything that you want. Because it is just a filtering option, use it for whatever you want. If you want the manufacturer to be pink, so you can say, show me all of my pink products, just do that, because why not? It's a filter. Anything that's a filter in simPRO is you're kind of doing yourself a disservice not using it. So if you can add anything that you think should be a good idea to filter by, add it to the manufacturer, because it's a really, really cool tool.
Absolutely. We have used that quite a few times with colors. So there's some roofers, for example, or fencing contractors that use it. And if Colorblind has like colors for everything, and they're very creative with their names. But what if I have a customer who wants, misty gray moonlight, or whatever that color is.
Misty gray moonlight. I'm not going to go what that sounds like.
And I don't want to have to sort through everything. So what you can do is the manufacturer can be the color, and you just select that color, and all of the items related to that color come up, and that's what I'm quoting them.
Yep.
Very good solution. Love it, Adzy. All right. So I want to choose something that isn't a bad thing. Unit of measure. There's a couple in here that we're going to tell you to avoid or to watch out for. So I'm hopefully going to save those. It's a bit like game of Jenga. We're choosing the good ones, and then the last few ones are left.
The ones that's going to make the tower collapse. We'll save them to the end. Yeah.
So unit of measure, generally I steer people away from unit of measure, but recently it's become a little bit more useful. The unit of measure now can display symbols, which it wasn't necessarily able to before. The PDF forms previously couldn't display symbols like square meter or diameter, the circle with a line through it, etc. Couldn't display those sort of symbols, but the form builder can. Possibly the PDF templates can now, I'm not sure, but the form builder definitely can. So you can use the unit of measure in your catalog items, and when you put them on a quote or an invoice, they can actually be displayed. A little bit of a word of warning, they're not used or displayed on other printed forms. So when you print a PDF, it's not going to come out. When you print any simPRO, when you print any simPRO PDF, so the invoicing, the quotes, the orders that are in brackets PDF, they won't show. Any custom form, we can build it in to show. And it doesn't show by default, as far as I remember, definitely not on the Connect app. I don't think it shows on the mobile app. And I think it only really shows in Enterprise, aside from the custom forms that you can build for quote and invoice. But it is pretty cool, and it is worth a look at.
Yeah, you can also restrict units and measurements to whole quantities as well. To say you can't buy 3.2 of this product, it'll just round up to the next closest number.
Yeah.
And just a quickie, because I can't remember, Daz, but can you use units and measurements in pre-builds?
No, you can't use units of measure in pre-builds. So for anybody who sells pre-builds and catalog items, what I recommend is you create a custom field with a drop down, and the drop down has the units of measure in there, and you can actually say within your quote to use one or the other. So they both, you can trick the system into thinking it's the same field, even though it's not. So it is doable on the custom forms, but keep in mind your technicians will not be able to see unit of measure on the mobile app or on the Connect app. The purchase orders will not show unit of measure because that can't be customized either. Only in the Enterprise or custom forms can you show that.
And if you did want it to, just a word of advice, if you did want to use it on pre-builds, what I usually do is I would usually put the unit of measurement first, so like meter squared, and then do like a little straight symbol, then type what it is, because that way it actually all lines up straight down the form. Whereas if you're putting it at the end of the description, it'll be all over the place. So if you start the units of measurement at the start of the pre-build, then type in the actual pre-build name, at least it'll all be straight down the list.
Or the custom field. And then you can get the custom field to show in its own column along with.
So I meant if you're using the standard forms, not the form builder.
Yes, 100%. You're right. And that will, yes, the purchase order, invoice and quote on the PDF forms, that's the way around it. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, I'm running out of good ones.
Jenga.
I'm thinking about which one I'm going to pull out.
Which block is the one that's going to be easiest?
We've done. Let's go inventory. Because I don't really know what that does, so I'm curious to find out what that does. No, I'm joking. So
I can help you out if you want, but I'm pretty sure you know.
So the inventory box inside of a catalog item. So really, you're going to be using this if you want it to be a non-inventory item. This mostly relates back to inventory tracking. If you've got that turned on, if you've got inventory tracking turned on, then you're basically saying that when I'm buying this item for stock, it's got to post to my inventory account.
Yep. Anything that you create in simPRO as a catalog item by default, there's no way to change this, is an inventory item. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing technically is exactly as Adz said, you're unticking the ones that you say this is an item that is not inventory. Mm-hmm. It's just a consumable. It's something that we really don't want to show in stock. It's just written off.
Something that you just want to sell, or something.
Yeah, silicon, tape, zip ties, anything that you've got in there that really shouldn't go into stock and shouldn't be attributed to stock. It should just be kind of written off. You untick the inventory.
Totes. All right, we're flying through these, Daz. This isn't going to be as long as I thought it'd be.
Right. So how it should be.
What's next, man? What are you going?
I would like to cover purchasing stages.
Purchasing stages for 200. Yep. Oh, sorry, it was a bad joke.
I haven't seen. I'm
going Jeopardy.
Yeah, I was going to say. So purchasing stage is something that it isn't commonly used, but it can be useful. Originally, I was just going to tell you not to worry about it, but there are some circumstances when it is useful for certain customers. What it is, you're grouping your catalog items into categories. So every catalog item can have a label as a purchasing stage. You set that up in the settings, you give it the options. So you'll have a drop down when you get to the catalog, and you don't have to use it as a stage of when you purchase it. It can just be a category. So when you get to a job, then the job converted from a quote has a list of all the items I need to buy. When I first start, I always like to buy these items first because they are long lead time items. So if you have items in your catalog that are quite standard that you buy first, like solar panels, HVAC air conditioning units or hot water systems, or anything that maybe isn't necessarily readily available the next business day, you might actually do your ordering in 2 stages. Stage 1, long lead time items. Stage 2, everything else. So what you can do for those long lead time items, create a purchasing stage to call it long lead time or purchase first or whatever you want to call it. And then when you go to your job, down the bottom of your project, you can actually say, I want to order all the things that are labeled with purchasing stage long lead time. Select that, tick all, and create order. And what it does, instead of creating an order for everything that you possibly need to order on the job, it'll just create an order for just those items labeled with whatever purchasing stage you chose. So it can be quite useful. Just a word of warning, be careful, because if there's one item in there that isn't labeled, it won't be ordered, and it could be a big mistake because that's the one unit. You'll get 10 units, but you actually needed 11. And the one that wasn't labeled is the one that doesn't arrive on time. So just be careful, double check that you've got the right things, but it can be really useful if used properly.
Yeah. That's usually one of the things that I say when we're implementing simPRO. That's a stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, or a 5-year plan. It's not important right now because you just order everything. Whatever you don't want to order, you just go tick, tick, tick.
Move it.
Yeah, it's safer, and it really doesn't offer an awful lot more functionality. I think it's a lot of work for not a lot of return.
Yeah. So if you do, and that's why I said normally I just recommend just move past it. But there are certain people that say, look, we have a set number of items. They're always the same. The catalog isn't always changing. We can control it. It's useful for you. But generally, it can lead to mistakes. Be careful.
Yep.
What's next?
All right. We're down to the final 2. Split quantity and trade price versus net. We've already touched on the supply tab. I don't think we need to do that again. So I'm going to take split quantity because I'm going to leave the trade price for you because it sounds like it's a topic that you'd love to talk about. So
it sounds like check.
Yeah.
Just put me in check.
Yeah. So the split quantity, this is something that you really only use if you absolutely have to, or if you have got a very good reason to use it. It's not something that most people would use. It's a very niche part of it. So essentially what you can do with the split quantity is say, when I get a price break, when I'm buying over a certain amount of something, and it's not dollar, it's quantity. So if I'm buying more than 300 of these products, everything thereafter becomes 20% cheaper. That's literally what it does. So you would set up what the amount is to get your price break after, what your price break actually is on that product, and then that's it. The system will take care of the rest for you. So if you were to buy 500, it'll say 300 at this price, 200 at this price, off you go.
Perfect.
Yep. I don't think we need to talk any more about that because I got a feeling that you're shaking waiting to talk about the trade price.
I am just, I'm going to go back one step and say on the suppliers tab, what we didn't talk about is just for anyone who's new to simPRO, this is where every supplier can be added who can sell you that individual product. And just note in there that each supplier on a particular product, on a catalog item, can have their own part number and their own price. So I just wanted to point that out, that we didn't sort of touch on that, but it's pretty obvious for most people who are using simPRO. But if you're new, add other suppliers via that tab.
Sorry, I completely forgot about that because we were talking about this, the other price points.
Yeah, that's all right. Yep. The dinosaur picked it up, no problem. So the trade price. Now, the trade price is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. I would like to, off off the bat, I want to say, if anyone from simPRO is watching, really we need some kind of setting that actually disconnects trade price from the supplier's cost price. I'll use an analogy here. Back in the 80s, for those people who remember those, you used to buy a Star Wars figurine and on the packet was the RRP. It was a dictated RRP that went across, same as the automotive industry. They have a sticker price for the individual vehicle. That's the same no matter where you buy it from. Not so in the trades industry. Every single supplier has a different trade price with a different discount. So you buy this item at 32% off from TradeLink, and when you go to Reese, you might get 43% off, but lo and behold, they are actually the same price that you pay. It's because they just structure their catalog differently. So the first problem with this is that the trade price is a single field that has to make do for all suppliers, which means it kind of doesn't work. The second problem with it is that the trade price is connected to all your suppliers' buy prices by discount. So back to the suppliers tab, that's where the different suppliers' prices are. You'll see there's a percentage discount. That might not match the percentage discount from your supplier because the trade price is different from each supplier. So the first point I'd say is that the trade price, you have to be so careful if you ever change it or touch it. I recommend you don't use it. I recommend if you want to charge trade price to a customer, you have a specific pricing tier called trade price and you lock in a price for each item that is the trade price. The problem with changing the trade price at any point is it will adjust all the suppliers' cost pricing. If you have 5 suppliers linked to a catalog item, which you should do if you can buy it from 5 different suppliers, cable, for example, you can buy from even Bunnings sell cable. You can get it from anywhere. And if you have all the different suppliers listed on your suppliers tab, when you change the trade price, it will mess with the buy price for all suppliers. If you're wondering why some of your catalog items change their price and you're like, I fixed this the other day and why is it different? Maybe someone's gone in and changed the trade price. So a little tip that I recommend to when I'm doing the implementation, make the trade price $1 because the number one, $1, just doesn't look like it's something that ever needs to be adjusted. Because if someone did go and adjust that price, if it says $32.95 and you go, oh, actually, it's now gone up to $33.95, it looks like that's the page to adjust it on, but it's not. You should change it on the supplier tab, not on the trade price or the details tab with the trade price. So if you make it $1, it just doesn't look like a box that needs to be adjusted. When you go to the suppliers tab, you will notice probably that there's a 32,000% markup or something like that on that item. It's just a cost of doing business, unfortunately. So if we could disconnect trade price from supplier pricing or have a setting there that says, would you like it connected or not? That would be fantastic. We don't, so be really careful. If you touch the trade price, it stuffs with your supplier's cost price. Therefore, generally, don't use it, is what I would say. Be careful with updating. You can tick a update supplier's trade price. I recommend not to do that because you don't know how many other prices you're adjusting in the background. Rant complete.
You're done?
That feels much better.
Got it out. It's out now. It's
This is like therapy. We should call it simPRO therapy with Daz Adz.
yeah, absolutely. And
What's
you want to see what doesn't make it to the video. That's a real fun stuff.
I know.
I think that's it, man. I think we've ticked everything.
Yeah, favorites is probably the last one, but we did sort of cover that when we were doing search terms. Tick the box, and the two things that will happen is if you enable it, you'll get a favorite star, a yellow star next to the item. And also there's a short list at the very top. There's actually a group called favorites. And if you click on that, you'll be filtering by the favorites only, not your favorites, system-wide favorites.
Actually, I'm going to throw one more little thing in that we haven't got in there.
Exciting.
Because I find this to be extremely handy and it's not on by default. It's something you've got to turn on. A lot of people say when I'm looking at my catalog and I'm trying to find a product, let's say I've searched 1.5 because I'm trying to find some 1.5 mil cable, and there's 5 different types of cable that are almost identical and you don't know which one you've bought before. My advice is, if you're using your catalog in any way, shape or form, hit modify table view if you have access to do so, and turn on the stock. Okay. What will happen is when you've done that, anything that's red in the stock, if it says 0 and it's red, you've never ordered it. If it says 0 and it's green, it's something you've ordered before. Just a quick word of advice. There's probably best off to save in a hidden gem, but that is something that will save you a ton of time because you can visually just see anything green is the one that I'm looking for. Anything red I've never used before. And that's actually not a bad little way to be able to know what can be archived as well. Anything red, archive it. You've never used it, never bought it, never sold it, never done anything. Get rid of it. Anyway, that's my last bit of advice.
Great advice. Recommend the same thing. All right. So that wraps up our part 2 of catalog chats, simPRO chats, catalog discussion titles. So I think we pretty much covered it all. So I don't know if we even need to ask you if there's anything extra. Thank you everybody for joining us for Catalog Chats. We do our best to bring you some useful information. As you can probably tell, we love simPRO, but of course we're honest when there's some fallbacks or things that don't quite work. And we're hoping if you believe the same thing, we can actually go to the portal, the submit an idea under the question mark icon within simPRO, and maybe you can vote on some of those things that we're talking about that maybe need to be enhanced. With your support, if you agree with what we're saying, we can actually make changes in simPRO. Heaps of changes come from that submit an idea area. So if you haven't gone there, if you haven't had a look, if there's anything that you think isn't functioning how you'd like, please go click on the question mark, submit an idea, have a look if the idea is there already, and then vote on any ideas that are there or create your own. There's a whole team of developers dedicated to putting those ideas into simPRO. So don't despair if something's not working exactly as you'd like. Do something about it. That's what I recommend.
Absolutely.
So that's it from us. I'm Darren Whitby. You can reach me, darren@platinumconsultants.com.au. And for you, Adz?
Yep. Everyone can reach me at info@amac.consulting, or just search AMAC Consulting and you should find my website.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe, as they say. Please do that. Feel free to comment. Just tell us if we're on the right track or we're not doing it as you like. If there's any topics you'd like us to cover, put that in the comments as well. Let us know how we're doing. We love to hear from you. Thanks again. We'll see you in the next chats with Daz and Adz.
Bye.
Bye.